Hello everybody, here I'm back after almost a year of absence, not from gaming but from video logging, and I'm back today with another installment of Kittens and Keeps. So this is going to deal with role-playing games, and I would like today to talk about Trail of Cthulhu by Kenneth Haidt. I bought this fairly recently, just basically a week ago. And the reason was that, as you know, or as you may recall, if you've been watching some of the non-wargaming and non-board gaming installments of my video channel, I ran a Call of Cthulhu campaign a couple of years ago, and we brought that to an end, and it was quite all right. But I wasn't too happy with the actual basic role-playing system that is applied in Call of Cthulhu, in terms of there are certain elements around Call of Cthulhu that I truly dislike, because I don't think it lends itself to a campaign, because the premise of the story obviously is that the more you know, the more you find out, the more mentally unstable you get. And this is quite, and although this may be in keeping with the ideas behind the stories of Lovecraft, where you have the individual fighting unnamed horrors from the beyond, for a role-playing campaign, this can actually be quite a downer. And I know that this is a controversial point of view, and I'm just saying that this is my point of view. So I didn't really enjoy Call of Cthulhu as a system. Later on, in 2014, we took part in a play test for the latest Delta Green version, and similar things happened there. There was one instance where the party ends up in a dungeon of some sort, and somewhere in the desert, and they come across an entity. It's not quite clear what they are coming across, but the funny thing was that the smartest and most educated of characters were the ones that didn't come out of the dungeon again, because it was really the stupid characters, and they were mainly soldiers and mercenaries who, well, basically, whose intelligence was pretty low, survived the horror because they were just too stupid to understand what was going on, and everybody else that had some physics and some geology actually knew what was happening, and as a result lost their marbles. And so again, there was no chance for these characters to advance. So basically, I think we had a character loss of 50% after one episode. And that's actually, you know, I think it depends on what you're into. But if you, like me, would like to role play a character and see the character advance, not necessarily grow, but advance and change over time, if you have to roll up a character every other episode simply because, you know, they didn't die, but they just went mad, I find that doesn't lend itself to the idea of a campaign, because a campaign needs a certain amount of stability, and I've run campaigns myself where people died, and I remember how difficult it was to bring in replacement characters. But if it happens basically every other session that someone loses their marbles and then is unavailable for the rest of the campaign, it makes it difficult for players to remain engaged, because you have to come up with a different character concept every single time, and then you have to find a way that they can fit into the party, and it's tedious. So that's why I've decided to get Trail of Cthulhu, which is based on the sorry, there's a glare there, can't be helped, which is based on the Gumshoe system, which we play tested a couple of years ago when we play tested Ashen Stars, which is also by Pelgrane Press, and is a brilliant sci-fi space opera backdrop. And the system, the Gumshoe system itself, is really great. The premise is that everyone is kind of an investigator. It depends really on the setting. In Ashen Stars, of course, seeing as it's set in space, you know, you would have different types of characters. You would have a captain, you would have stratcos and engineers and stuff. And in Trail of Cthulhu, of course, you would have different types of people, different characters that fit the setting. It's usually set in the 1930s. But of course you can set it in different times. It doesn't really make any difference. But the idea is that you're all somehow investigating. There's a lot more going on in terms of action as well, as opposed to Call of Cthulhu, because Call of Cthulhu does have combat rules, as does Delta Green. But in the playtest we did for Delta Green, combat was actually quite horrific. It was a very clunky system, which none of us liked. And also in the basic role playing, it's kind of different. It doesn't put its emphasis on fighting, and that's very good for people who don't necessarily enjoy fighting very much. But the combat rules, if you choose to do combat, are much better here, or are much different in Trail of Cthulhu. And another thing that is very important is that you use a 6-sided die, and that's all you do. You have character abilities for which you assign points, and then you can spend points. So for example, you can say, okay, I want to pick this lock, and I'm going to use, and I know it looks really complicated, it's a safe lock, I don't know, combination plus key, so I'm going to spend 2 points from my pool, so the pool is reduced by 2, and then I roll a 6-sided die. Then I add my points spent to the roll that I've got, so to a maximum of, in this case, 8. And if I roll an 8, it's pretty sure that I will succeed, you know. If I roll, usually tests have a level of difficulty of 4. So you have to roll a 4, or you have to have a combined spend plus roll that equals 4 or higher. But it can go up to, you know, very, very difficult. So that's quite nice, because you have to make a decision at the beginning before you roll if you're going to spend, knowing that once you've spent your pool, the pool is gone. It will refresh during the campaign, but it will not refresh necessarily during a session. So you might end up with no points in weapons, for example, or no points in lockpicking or whatever your ability is. And it might be required later on. So it's very important to balance this out. So there is a tactical element as well. Do we want to spend now? Or would we not do this at the beginning, hoping that we will find other things? The whole story is based around investigation. It's an investigation game, and around clues which you can get using your abilities, sometimes using spends in these abilities. But it's basically finding clues that will lead you from scene to scene, so that at the end of the day, you can solve the story. The secret can be uncovered, can be revealed, the monster can be slain. Which brings me to the question of what happens in this Trail of Cthulhu to sanity. Because as I said earlier, what I didn't like about Call of Cthulhu and also the recent Delta Green playtest was that once you lose your sanity, that's it. Now, in this game, you have 2 approaches. You can either play in the pure style, which limits the characters that you have available, which also influences the way you deal with sanity, or you play in the pulp style. Now, here you have 2 entities. You have stability and sanity. When something happens to you, you have to make stability rolls, and you might lose stability, but you may not go insane necessarily. So your sanity points could remain the same. Stability can be refreshed. Sanity may, at the end of a campaign, you know, be refreshed if you do certain things. So your characters will stay sane much, much longer. And also, if you really do not want to lose sanity to any great extent, what you can do is you can choose to faint. So, oh my god, there is something coming out of Rillier. Is it Cthulhu? I just don't want to see it. I decide to faint. Now, the problem with fainting is, of course, that once you're unconscious, you can't participate. So loads of things could go wrong with your body just lying there. But at least your sanity remains intact. If then Great Cthulhu chooses to devour you because your friends have already run and have left you behind because you're too heavy to carry, well, then you're dead. But at least you're blissfully ignorant of what's going on. Of course, it does say in the book, fainting has a couple of risks that the players need to be aware of. If you don't get rescued, then, you might stay there for quite a long while. Somebody might find you who's a cultist. They might actually decide to sacrifice you. Or the house might explode and fall down on you. Or if you're in the sewer, there could be a wave of flood water and you get washed away. These are all things that can happen to you if you're unconscious, if you make a decision not to lose sanity. But also, it might be a good option if you know that, you have a couple of friends with you who will be able to fight the monster or who will be able to do something to rescue you. So it is a nice option, which can be dangerous, but which at least you have. So I have spent some time reading the book. Obviously, I also got, I think it's called Eldritch Tales. It's a collection of 4 adventures, and in this there is also one adventure called The Kingsbury Horror. And I haven't run any adventures. That's next on my list. But what I've done is I've listened to a couple of adventures online. So actual role-playing podcasts have given me some insight into it. I've listened to a adventure written by Caleb, I think his name may be Stokes, but I'm not sure, called The Wives of March, which is available through Drive-Thru RPG for free. It's quite an interesting Trade of Cthulhu adventure set in the Deep South, in a small town outside Savannah, Georgia. I've listened to Shanghai Bullets, and I've also listened to a couple of the purist Trail of Cthulhu games, namely The Dying of St. Margaret and I forget the one with the birds, I forget the name. They're also published by Pelgrane Press. So, and of course I know Ash and Stars, so I'm quite familiar with the system. So what I'm now planning on doing is I'm planning on putting together a one-shot, probably Shanghai Bullets. I haven't made a decision there yet. And I'll let you know how that goes. But I'm really excited about this, and I'm really looking forward to this because I have high hopes that using this system will actually invigorate the Cthulhu game for my group, because, my group was also kind of annoyed with the fact that people were losing their marbles left, right, and center. You had to have replacement characters so and so often. And they just felt that, for a group that tends to rely on the heroic and tends to rely on building characters and maintaining them and, playing with them, role-playing them, it's quite annoying if you lose characters and if there is no it's quite annoying if you lose characters so frequently and if there is no real progression in a way, because you can't progress, because the more you know, the more crazy you become, and the less viable your characters become, which is quite annoying, I would say, and I understand that. So basically, here's hoping, and keep your fingers crossed for me, that with Trail of Cthulhu I will be able to reinvigorate the idea of Cthulhu as a role-playing game in my group. So I'll keep you posted. And there's one of the little generals, and he says hi to Mamie Hayakawa. Oh, sorry, Mamie Connor at this stage, Fushigi TV. And yeah, hopefully I'll hear from you guys soon. With regard to will there be wargaming? Well, I have wargamed in the last 12 months, but I have to say that due to the fact that I've had a serious back injury, which made it impossible for me to sit for more than 30 minutes without getting serious problems, and also because I've started to study for a BSc in mathematics and statistics at the Open University, my time has been very limited. I game once a week and I do play the odd war game, but actually to make a wargaming video, like a series of videos playing through a scenario, explaining the rules and that kind of thing, I just haven't had the chance and the time. My term ends in, I think, May, and doesn't start again until October. So maybe between May and October I will be able to play a couple of games. I've got several that I still even haven't opened, let alone unboxed. So I may actually start unpacking all of the wrapped boxes that I have in my study, and I will do a couple of unboxings first. But I can't promise that I will be doing as many videos as I used to. Okay, so bye.